Hi everyone, it's me again, Joshua. It's my pleasure to be recording the second part of this tutorial on how to sync Webflow CMS with Xano's database. On the previous part, we learned how to store creation and changes on the CMS records onto Xano, and today we're gonna learn how to record these changes from Xano's database to Webflow CMS. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is make some changes to our database structure. You will need to add these changes to all the tables that are syncing with Webflow CMS. In this case, we are only using the blocks collection, so we will only add the changes to this specific table. We will need to add two new booleans that will help us so we can record all the changes in this database onto Webflow CMS. So you guys will need to add these two, the asynchronized boolean and the edited from Xano's boolean, so I can show you guys how we will use them. Now from this same view, we will need to create a new trigger that will handle the insert and update events. You can create them following the next steps. So we go right here, more options, triggers, add a database trigger. We can set the name that we want and we select the insert and updates and then we save it. In my case, since I have already created a trigger for this, I will not use it, but you guys need to save it. So I will go to my trigger that I have created and name sync to CMS. In this case, we will have two conditionals inside a database transaction. First, we will get the record from the CMS blocks and we will check the ID and we will block it. We will do this in order to other APIs that won't be able to modify these records until we finish all the triggers actions. So then the first conditional that we will check is the insert. We will check first that the unknown action is insert. So in these cases, when we are creating a new record, and we will check here that all the variables that we need to exist in the CMS are not empty. So we check tag is not empty equals false, name is empty equals false, and so on. Also, we will check that new.isSynchronize equals false. What this means is that every time you create a new record in Xano's database, you need to make sure to leave the asynchronized boolean that we created as false. You will see later why this is like that. So then what we will do is we will edit this CMS block and we will set the asynchronized as true. This won't matter since we have already blocked all the transactions of the CMS blocks in other APIs. So then we will use this third-party API call from Xano, and we will call this API endpoint of the API documentations of Webflow. So you can see here, it's api.webflow.com, v2 collections, collection ID, items bulk. It's very important for you guys to use this specific route. Then we replace the collection ID with the collection ID of the database we're using. Since we were using, as you guys remember, the collections of blocks, this is the ID. You can also, if you don't remember what the collection ID is, if you follow the previous part of the tutorial, you will see here that if we go to database and we go to Webflow's collections, you can find here the Webflow ID of the collection. So we go back here, then you will need to add all these steps. We need to add that is arced false, is dropped false, and then the field data. This field data will be the slug name of all the variables on the CMS. You can see here that we have all the data we use. We use name, tag, summary, overview. If you guys need to know what's the name of the slug variables, you can always go to the previous part of the video and see here that when we add some records to the CMS blocks, you will find here, this is the name. In this case, it's image, slug. You can see here, name, tag, summary. These are the names of the slugs that you will use to create the new record. So let's get back. Once we have created a new record using this API, then we will save them. We will check first that the response status of this is less than 300. So it means that this was run successfully. Then we will create a new variable. The bulk API, it's used to create more than one record at a time. But in this case, we will only use it for one, so we always have to get the first record. So we create a variable, the Webflow CMS response result items, and we always get the first one. Then what we will do is that we will edit the CMS ID and the CMS log of this item. This so we can synchronize, and when we edit something from CMS, we will see the updates here. In case the status was not less than 300, we will leave it as synchronized false so we can know that this had never arrived on the CMS. Then, from the action of update, we can see here that we leave some other conditionals. We have the same, we have action equals update in this case, we have the same from the variables, but we also are going to check that edited from Xano it's true and synchronized it's false. This means that every time you guys edited some record of Xano, either from the database structure or with an API endpoint using the edit record function, you guys need to leave it like that. The edited from Xano boolean needs to be true, and the asynchronized booleans need to be false. And then we will call this our endpoint, which is appywebflow.com v2 collections collection ID items item ID. The collection ID is the same as before, and the item ID you will get it from the get record from the new structure. The new structure will always tell you the CMS ID. So if we go here, we go to new, you can find the CMS ID right here. So yeah, that will help like that. So next, I will show you guys the changes we make in the APIs of the previous part of this tutorial. Okay, so to finish before testing all that we have accomplished in this new part of the tutorial, we're going to see the changes we made in the two APIs we created on the previous part, the new Webflow item and the edited Webflow item. So first, with the new Webflow item, we're going to see two main changes. The first change is that when we are going inside the if clause of the name, we are going to do a get record of the database structure using the CMS ID. We are doing this because now we know that we can also be creating these new records directly from the trigger, and this then will call the API.webflow, and the Webflow will add the record in the CMS, and that will cause to create an infinite loop where Xano's call Webflow and Webflow calls Xano, and we will create a lot of records. So we need to check if the record already exists. Then we are going to check this. If it does not exist, we'll do the normal addition we made in the previous video. But except we're going to make that edited from Xano is false and asynchronous is true because it's already synchronized since we created in Xano, and then Xano calls Webflow and Webflow calls again Xano. Then we are going to go to the edited Webflow icon. Here we make some other changes. The first one is that we are going to do this in a database transaction. This is happening because we are going to need to test some changes that we are doing in the other API. So first, we are going again to do the get record of the CMS. We are going to lock it in order to other APIs don't to modify it, because if other API are modifying the same record, it's going to call then the trigger is going to call Webflow, and so on infinitely. So we are going to check if the record that already exists, and we are going to lock it. Then we're going to make this conditional. We're going to check if the edited is coming from Xano, as we know before in the trigger we set it as true, and the synchronized as false. If the edit is coming directly from the CMS, you will know that because the edit from Xano will still be as false. So we are going to check this with an AND clause. So if this happens, which means that the edited was coming from Xano's database, we're going to do this. We are only going to set the synchronize to true and the edit from Xano to false. This we are doing it since we already made the changes in Xano's database, and all we are getting is the changes payload of the Xano calling Webflow's API. But if this is not happening, which means that the change was directly made in the CMS, we are going to edit all the flow. We are going to edit everything, and we will not change the asynchronized or the edited from Xano. And that would be it. So let's test it so you guys can see what we have accomplished. Okay, now to finish this tutorial, we are going to test what we have accomplished. So the first thing we're going to do is go here. Please remember, Every time you are going to add a new record to your database table, you have to do it two ways. Or with an API with a add record collection. So you add a record with all the data you need from your Webflow CMS, or you can go here to the database, click as open as card and fill all this data. So let's say test sync. We will use maybe this for everything since we need it. Overview and overview, and we will send it just like that. We won't send it synchronized, and we will set edit from Xano. We will click save. As you can see here, once we do this and we refresh, we are going to see the CMS ID, the CMS log, and the asynchronized. We are going to see this basically immediately because we know that this new record called a trigger, this trigger that we have just created, and this called the CMS. So if we go here, we can see that this was the four ones we had before. If we refresh the page, we are going to see that we have a new one, which is test sync. So now let's check if the edit flow is also working. So we go here, test sync database. Right now this isn't working, you will see. If we go here and we refresh, the name, go here, CMS, the name is still the same. This is happening. Why? In order for this to work, you always have, after making some changes, to set this as false and set this as true. Once we do this, if we refresh the page, you are going to see that again we have synchronized as true and edited from Xano as false. If we go again to the CMS and refresh, go to CMS, you can now see that it have made the changes. So remember, every time you are going to add a new record, use this open as card. Every time you are going to edit some record, do all the changes you want to do, and then click these two columns. Click the synchronize and the edit from Xano. Because remember that in the trigger we made two conditionals in the if else clause. That it's synchronized, it's false, and edited from Xano, it's true. And that would be all. I hope you have enjoyed this second and last part of this tutorial on how to sync Webflow CMS and Xano's database.